Hello, Darshan Maharaja here. Yesterday's election yielded another liberal minority government. Although this may change because there are, I think, about a dozen ridings where the margin of victory is wafer thin. In some cases, this is less than 200 votes, so there is an automatic recount. And in other cases, the losing candidate may opt to demand a recount. So the final numbers are still a little bit fluid. But presently, the Liberals have 168 seats, which is four short of a clear majority. Now, I'm seeing a lot of emotional reaction, and that is understandable from both sides of dejection and jubilation, respectively. That is talking about the liberal and conservative supporters. I don't know where the NDP supporters stand at the moment because their party has basically crashed and burned. But what I'd like to tell the conservative supporters is that, in fact, their party did very well. It is only because of exceptional circumstances that they could not win enough seats to form government. Uh, for example, they gained 25 seats, and more importantly, their vote share was the highest that it has been since 1988. So you're talking about 37 years, and I think about 8 or 9 elections, or maybe 10. So that's an achievement. There are entire demographics that were heavily not in favor of conservative earlier, who have voted in large numbers for the conservatives. So these are the gains. It's just because of factors, some of them external, some of them internal, that are kind of, they stood in the way of conservatives winning enough seats to even form a minority. Of course, top of the mind is Donald Trump and his rhetoric. And then also top of mind is the absolute collapse of NDP. But I have been saying on Twitter for a few months now that there are certain uh, unforced errors, to use a term from the world of tennis, some unforced errors that the conservatives made. Broadly, there is a common thread running through all of them, although the instances are different and of different types. The common thread is, first of all, that they, when they were so far ahead in the polls, it generated a sense of hubris that this election was in the bag already. And then, because of that, human nature being what it is, I'm not saying it specifically to criticize any individual or group of individuals. I am also a human. I am also susceptible to the same failings. But hubris set in, and various groups of people or influential constituencies may have been mistreated, or they may have felt that they were mistreated. And especially, and this is one point that I think is crucial, which is the bungled nomination races in the 905, especially elsewhere also, but more importantly in 905, because as people who are in politics full time, they should know that no party can form a majority government without winning big in the 905 area. So those nominations should be under a microscope. Instead of that, a lot of hanky panky was allowed to be carried out. That created a sense of disenchantment among a lot of would be conservative voters. And if you look at the results, for example, north of Toronto, or to the west of Toronto, specifically Brampton and Mississauga, if you switch those seats around from liberal to conservative, then the conservatives would have formed a minority government. So this is a very hard lesson that they will have to learn. And going forward, they'll have to be ruthlessly fair. in these nominations. Don't get waylaid, don't get tempted by anything. Just say that we want the best possible candidate here and may the best player win. That is, of course, one of their strategic mistakes. It also points to a lack of managerial acumen, but I don't know what the internal workings were, so I will not say more on that. Suffice to say that there are areas in the country where you want to make sure that you are not letting your nomination process be hijacked by any individual, any group, any special interest, whatever. It has to be ruthlessly fair. Now, NDP has got only 7 seats. That may change, as I said earlier, because of recounts or whatever. But uh, the question now is whether it remains as a party or not. If you think back uh, over the past decade, I think there has been a slow-mo merger going on between the Liberals and the NDP at the federal level, where in 2015, Justin Trudeau ran to the left of NDP and cornered their votes. And then after that, when Jagmeet Singh became the leader of NDP in 2019, 2021, and 2025, you can see how the distinguishing features between the two parties were gradually disappearing, maybe evaporating, choose your term. So I'm interested to see what these 7 MPs of NDP are going to do. Are they going to uh, give conditional support to the minority government if it remains a minority, that is? Are they going to give conditional support, issue-based support, and thereby make the liberals pay some kind of a political price for enacting their agenda, their legislation? Or are they going to defect outright? I'm seeing some speculation on Twitter to this effect, but I'm not very sure. That there is a party and they belong to it, and for them to and block defect to a key competitor, it has to, I mean, the probability is low, but it exists. So we have to see what happens. Even then, even if all 7 of them do support the Liberal Party in one way or the other, that kind of a wafer thin minority is not a very strong position for Prime Minister Carney. So again, we could be having an election in another 18 to 24 months. I mean, this is a possibility. I don't make predictions in politics because there are so many external and unknown factors at play that it is a mug's game. We can look at possibilities and see if the possibilities are translating to probabilities, and if it is a probability, whether it is 5% or 95%. But even when it is 95%, the remaining 5% of probability of things happening the other way can prevail. So there's no point making predictions. But how long will Prime Minister Carney last in this current term is, of course, something that we have to flesh out. Uh, First of all, as I said, the thumb rule is that a minority government lasts about 18 to 24 months. The median is, I think, about 21 months. And then there is the Trump factor. You never know what he's going to do next. Um I sometimes wonder whether he knows it himself, but probably he does. So he may do something very unexpected and then change the Canadian political scene in ways that we had not expected, just as happened over the last few months. So that Trump factor is something that you cannot quantify. So that is one unknown, as the late Donald Rumsfeld put it so eloquently. Then there is the elephant in the room, immigration. And I don't mean to sound like an activist here because I have done tons of work on that issue over the last few years, especially last 1.5 years. And I don't mean to sound like an activist because of that work, but it is the elephant in the room, a whole range of issues. If Prime Minister Carney wants to address sufficiently and to the people's satisfaction, because narrative spinning will only go so far. Then immigration will have to be tackled. He has not said much about that. In his platform, he said that they would limit immigration to 1% of the population, but that is too vague. 1% of which population? Because if you include the non-permanent residents in population, then their presence in Canada should not justify more immigration. That is one point of view. And then, of course, he has left out, because he was talking about 1% immigration in terms of permanent residents. But what happens to the non-permanent residents, and which has been actually the cause of much of the upheaval that we have seen in the last 3, 4 years? So he didn't say anything about that. He will have to address all these, because if he doesn't, then, as I said, narrative spinning will only go so far. And then public sentiment may turn against him. Another key promise that he made was on housing, 500,000 homes a year, and he was talking about prefabricated homes. So apart from the desirability aspect of prefabricated homes, and let me tell you, they are not as desirable as homes that are built in situ. Even prefabricated homes are not something that you buy from somewhere and then plonk in a plot of land. No, the same process of building the home is happening, except it's happening indoors in a factory somewhere, and then the transport happens. So uh, the lead time is not reduced to the degree that he has misled people into believing. So housing is an issue, and again, that will require resolving. Immigration as an issue. Cost of living is also on the same uh, level, and the availability of jobs, especially the uh, minimum wage jobs that typically young people, teenagers, and students do, or retired people do, to supplement their income, and everybody else. For example, new immigrants, for the 20 plus years that I have been in Canada, were forced to take these jobs for the period while they were, acquiring Canadian qualification, certification, whatever. So that was typically a period of 1 year, 2 years. So if all these constituencies are banished from that job market, then at some point he will be answerable for that. And then there is his pet project of net zero. He reduced the carbon tax, that is the consumer portion of carbon tax, to 0%, but the legislation still exists. He has talked about increasing carbon tax on industry. He is a, devotee of net zero idea. So whether he will be able to balance that with his promise to build pipelines, and that promise he made only in English. In French, he said something completely opposite. Whether Quebec will allow him to uh, implement pipeline projects through the territory of Quebec going to the Atlantic seaboard. Even on the western side, I mean, we have seen how protracted the protests can be for oil and gas projects. A handful of people are able to hold up the projects for ad infinitum, basically. So all these issues are uh, going to decide, including the unpredictable Trump factor, as to how long Prime Minister Carney can make this term last. Now, if he manages to get the majority, then that may be less of a concern. But then, of course, we have to think about what happens to Pierre Poilievre, because under his leadership, the party did secure significant gains. It made significant progress in increasing the vote share, reaching out to certain demographics that were previously not inclined to vote conservative. He has, from the reports that I have seen, he has showed an intention to stay on as the party leader. Now, if Prime Minister Carney's government is able to last for only 1.5 or 2 years, then thinking from the conservative side, for them to have a leadership race in the meantime, have a new leader, and then leave sufficient time for the leader to make outreach across the country may not be very feasible. So, I mean, if the next election is going to come in a year or two, then I would say that he has to stay on. He has already reached out, he has established a relationship with local communities across the country and with independent media. Although shunning outright mainstream media may have been an ill-advised move, I think he will, if he stays on, then he will have to work on that. Or the new leader, if the party decides to go for a leadership race, whoever it is, they will have to uh, recalibrate their relationship with the mainstream media and establish deeper connections with ethnic media, local media, independent media in English and French, all these that are not in the mainstream media. And let's hope that the country gets back on an even keel, which presently it is not. And frankly, my personal opinion is that given the prior inclinations of Prime Minister Carney and the political compulsions under which he will have to function, I don't think he is going to be able to bring us back to an even keel. But that is my personal opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. Until we meet again, goodbye and be well.